coming up.
We were brushed off, we were stood up, we had visas denied, all types of excuses for not being met with. Can you tell the committee from your experience or your thoughts on why does India feel so comfortable brushing us off like that? It just seems quite insulting.
It's quite clear that Beijing has interfered in prior elections. Now, what message, in your view, is sent based on how Canada has dealt with foreign interference from Beijing in relation to how India is now attempting to, obviously carry out violence, murders, extortion?
This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
When we heard from Nathalie Drouin and the Deputy Minister the other day, we understood then that there were a number of attempts of Canada to meet with India to discuss this. We were brushed off, we were stood up, we had visas denied, all types of excuses for not being met with. Can you tell the committee from your experience or your thoughts on why does India feel so comfortable brushing us off like that? It just seems quite insulting.
It's a good question, Ms. Dancho, and I thank you for it. I think there are two things at play here. One is that India believes that it can be more muscular in its approach to Canada, and as you say, brush us off and frankly treat senior Canadian officials with extraordinary degrees of contempt. They believe simply that they have the power to do that. And I would say as well that India is, I've described this before, as being stuck in what I call a plausible deniability box. And they're finding it difficult to get out of that box in terms of taking responsibility or being accountable for some of the covert operations that they've been linked to. They are in an embarrassing position, I would say, with regard to the United States in terms of having been forced by the U.S. to agree to an investigation into covert operations conducted against American citizens. They would like to be able to treat Canada differently, so bend to the United States, not bend to Canada, as a way of, frankly, saving face while the Indian government figures out a real escape route from its past practices.
So, Mr. Work, they feel very confident not treating they wouldn't feel as confident treating the United States that way. Would they feel as confident treating the UK that way, for example, or another of our Five Eyes? It seems that it's Canada, but perhaps it's not just Canada.
Well, what we've seen, Ms. Dancho, is that these kinds of covert operations, which I suggest were first conducted at scale in Pakistan by RAW, have been exported to the West, including to the UK, including to Germany, the United States, obviously, we know one case in particular there, and to Canada. India will approach each of these countries and the ties with them, selectively on a case-by-case basis. There are particular frictions, of course, given past history between India and Britain. But a recognition, I think, on the part of India that both Britain and Germany are, in many respects, significant powers in ways that Canada is not in their eyes. So they have seen, certainly in the past, Canada as a power that they can push around on the global stage, and a power that it makes sense for them in terms of domestic politics and their official line that successive Canadian governments never take seriously their concerns about violent extremism abroad targeting their country. They've made Canada, frankly, a bit of a target. And it will be, in my view, very interesting to see how they respond next to a forceful pushback, as I would call it, by the Canadian authorities.
Thank you. As I mentioned, you'd also, in your opening remarks, talked about the Five Eyes alliance that we have to share intelligence. My understanding with the way that works is we get out of the Five Eyes what we put in. So for contributing intelligence, we'll get a relatively same degree back. And my understanding as well is that Five Eyes certainly can provide us a lot of intelligence to kind of tip us off of what may be going on here. So it's critical that we have a strong presence there and are contributing. Do you feel that Canada is contributing to the level that they should be? Are we getting the most that we can out of this, or should we be doing more?
I think a lot of our Five Eyes partners would like to see Canada do more, frankly, and this has been expressed from time to time, particularly in terms of certain kinds of capacities to collect intelligence globally. There have been, from time to time, criticisms directed at Canada that we do not have, for example, a foreign intelligence service, unlike all of our other Five Eyes partners. And that's an area where Canada continues to face pressure. I think where Canada is highly regarded as a partner within the Five Eyes is in regard to its signals intelligence capabilities in terms of foreign intelligence collection, cybersecurity. Also regarded as a useful partner in terms of the kinds of strategic intelligence assessments that we can share with our Five Eyes partners, and that Canadian view is often regarded as a useful sort of touch point for other countries to consider how they're looking at global threats. In terms of your opening remark about the Five Eyes being a kind of equal trading relationship, the reality is it's never been that. The United States is by far and away the largest and greatest intelligence power in the Five Eyes. Other countries try and make their contribution, but we get a lot more out of the Five Eyes than we can put in, and no one has ever suggested that we should have a kind of equal trading relation in terms of intelligence there.
Thank you. And certainly we've had a number of extraordinary witnesses from government, and it seems like they're working very hard to do more than we even know to keep this country safe. And of course, we're very proud of our intelligence agents and operators. But I do feel that I do take issue when we get criticisms from security officials around the world calling Canada a free rider, whether it's on defense or intelligence gathering. And so just with my few seconds, just more advice from you of what Canada can be doing to elevate our position to support us from being, in essence, bullied by foreign countries.
Again, I think a tougher diplomatic response to various forms of Indian aggression and a more robust capability, especially I would come back to the question of how well positioned are we really to conduct significant penetrating counterintelligence operations against Indian officials in Canada. We have the laws to allow us to do that. But CSIS as an organization these days is overstretched. The RCMP is certainly. And India would never have been regarded as a principal counterintelligence mission for the Canadian community until recently. So there's going to have to be a surge of capabilities and talent into that area. It may take time to achieve it. But I suspect the recognition is there, but there's probably going to be a gap between understanding that there's a new kind of counterintelligence mission that has to be performed and the ability to perform it fully.
Do you think all of the leaders in the House should get a top secret security clearance to get briefings on this issue and any others that impact the national security of the country?
I'm happy to go first. Thank you for the question, Ms. Danoff. I should just say that I'll preview a submission that I'm writing on behalf of the Centre for International Governance Innovation to the Foreign Interference Inquiry. And one of the recommendations we're going to offer to Justice Hogue is precisely this, that it would be beneficial for all leaders of opposition parties to have a top secret clearance and to be briefed by officials from the security and intelligence community. Beneficial for two reasons: to expand their understanding of national security threats, not just foreign interference, but a wide range of them, to expand that understanding and allow them to perform the mission that they will all have of holding the government to account. And secondly, and we've heard much about this in this committee and in other fora, to enhance their ability to understand the potentially direct impacts of foreign interference within their own caucuses. So yes.
Thank you. And Mr. Granger?
Yes, my answer would be yes, also for two reasons. First of all, it's always important to know exactly the issues about national security you're dealing with, especially with India. Second, also, when will be the next trip of a Canadian Prime Minister in India? I think he should be aware of who's surrounding him, making sure that this trip goes smoothly, because if you compare to other trips in the past, I would say there were some mishaps. And also, it's the message that we're going through India when we travel there as a Prime Minister, a representative of not only political parties, but of Canada. And this is why also the obsession of always visiting Punjab maybe should be questioned. Because this is a way of, I would say, I would not say confronting India, it's an own homeland, but for sure it does not make them very comfortable when they have this type of visits and it celebrates basically it fragilizes in a certain way their perception of their own unity. So I would say that, yes, everybody should be aware of what they're doing, and also all the leaders of the political parties should know exactly who's dealing with our relations with India, and within their party, and also, of course, within the different ministries.
Dr. Wark, I was really interested with your opening comments. We've just got so many questions to ask, and maybe I'll get to ask them another time or after this. I gather your expertise is wide-ranging when it comes to foreign interference, and we're obviously talking about interference from India here, but I'm wondering, when we talk about what one country does, and you've alluded to this perhaps obliquely, maybe more directly at other times, about how countries like India, when they engage in foreign interference, that they look at the treatment of other countries. In other words, how does Canada respond to foreign interference from other countries? Now, it's quite clear that Beijing has interfered in prior elections. Now, what message, in your view, is sent based on how Canada has dealt with foreign interference from Beijing in relation to how India is now attempting to, obviously carry out violence, murders, extortion? I hope I'm being clear on my question.
Thank you, sir. It's a good question, and I would approach it in this way, that let's say when a foreign country, authoritarian state like China, Russia, increasingly India, engages in foreign interference, they do so by attempting to understand their target on, if you like, two different levels. On a political level, I mean, how well can we operate politically within that country in terms of engaging with target audiences in that country? What is the state of our diaspora in that country? To what extent can we encourage them to form and hold opinions that are favorable to our official policy? So there's that political level. There's a different level in terms of foreign states like those countries trying to understand, well, what kind of resistance are we going to meet by security and intelligence agencies in those foreign countries that we're targeting? They may be able to come to a picture of that kind of political environment that they're operating in. I would suggest to you, sir, that one of the challenges for many authoritarian states, no matter what the size of their intelligence arms might be, one of the challenges is really understanding the operating environment abroad. What are they going to hit when they try and conduct operations in Canada, US, UK, Europe, and so on? And they will often engage in those operations with a degree of ignorance about their opposition, what they're going to face, and a degree of overconfidence about what they can achieve. It's because we're in the secret world now and knowing, how to understand the success of foreign interference operations. But I think one of the blind spots of many authoritarian states is that they come at foreign interference with a picture of the politics of a foreign target, which may not be very accurate, and they often come at intelligence and security operations related to foreign interference without a full understanding of what they're going to meet in terms of security pushback. And so I think my view, and I appreciate that this has been a contested issue, including throughout the public inquiry into foreign interference, my view that Canada should be seen as some kind of playground for foreign interference. My own view personally is that that's an exaggerated position. But again, I would separate it between what foreign states think about Canada as a playground politically and what they think about Canada as a playground in terms of security intelligence capabilities. And I think there are two different calculations there. Perhaps an easier target politically, harder target in terms of operations on the ground.
When I see what
Thank you, Mr. Trudeau. We go now to Ms. O'Connell for 4 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to both of our witnesses for being here. I have to say how dismayed I am once again on our second day of testimony here. We just had, I think, really powerful testimony from two members of the community in our last hour, speaking about personal threats to themselves. Mr. Moninder Singh spoke about some of the last words spoken from Mr. Najjar, and the Conservatives asked in their first round if Canada is getting brushed off by India in meetings. Do you think the Sikh community experiencing threats against their life care that Canada and the Modi government brushed off some of those meetings? Or perhaps if we cowered to that pressure, like Stephen Harper, who condemned Canadians' rights for free speech, who promoted Sikh separatism, he got those meetings. Andrew Scheer got those meetings. Do you think that Canadians care about the brushing off of meetings over the safety of members of our community's lives? Like, let's seriously think about this. And Mr. Caputo, in his round of questions on a study about foreign interference of India, asked about China. I wonder how the Sikh community feels after that powerful testimony just not even an hour ago about threats to life in our country. And Mr. Caputo asked about China. Ms. Dancho asked about brushing off of meetings. Perhaps we should be asking about how the Indian government has used agents to threaten the lives of Canadian citizens. Perhaps that should be a priority in the limited time that we have in these meetings. So to our two witnesses, do you think that it provides Canadians a sense of safety and security, whether or not the Modi government likes us enough to have those meetings? Or is it better for Canada to initiate Canadian policy and take a Canadian stance that protects our citizens?
I'm happy to go first in response to that question, and through you, Chair, I would say two things. I can't speak, of course, on behalf of the Sikh community. I would say that I would hope that the Sikh community would take considerable comfort from some of the revelations about the details of Canadian diplomatic and national security efforts in terms of trying to convince the Indian government to cease its covert operations in Canada. And we have learned a great deal about that. All the members of this committee have learned an extraordinary amount about that in terms of the testimony you got a couple of days ago. We've learned more about it in the foreign interference inquiry from the RCMP press conference on Thanksgiving Day. I think there are some demonstrations there that are important, not just to the Sikh community, but to Canadians as a whole, to see their government taking action diplomatically, strong action diplomatically, and taking action on the national security front. And the question of Canadian officials being brushed off should be taken seriously in the sense that Canadian officials, at the end of the day, created a policy around responding to being brushed off that was designed to try and bring a stop to these Indian covert activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. O'Connell.